What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive into our first news. Khabib has stirred conversation once again by stating that Usman Nurmagomedov is more well-rounded than Ilia. Right now, Ilia sits on the UFC's lightweight throne and is recognized across the world as one of the very best fighters in the sport. His rise has been dominant, his performance is spectacular, and many already see him as one of the most dangerous champions the division has ever seen. But according to Khabib, while Ilia may be holding the UFC belt, his cousin Usman is the more complete fighter overall. Usman might not be as widely known among casual fans who often treat the UFC as the entire sport itself, but anyone who follows mixed martial arts closely knows his name well. He has established himself as an elite competitor by remaining undefeated with a perfect 19-0 record. Not only that, but he also holds the Bellator Lightweight Championship, making him one of the most accomplished fighters outside of the UFC. For years, discussions about who the best lightweight in the world really is have gone beyond the UFC cage, and Usman's presence in Bellator has always kept that debate alive. In a recent interview that Khabib did, later shared by the PFL through social media, the MMA legend was asked to compare Ilia and his cousin. Khabib made it clear that talk only goes so far, and that fighters truly prove themselves when they meet inside the cage. He said that people can argue all day, but in his opinion, when it comes to being a well-rounded fighter, Usman is better. Coming from Khabib, whose word carries enormous weight in the sport, that statement sparked plenty of discussion. Usman has shown over the years that he can adapt to any style. His striking is sharp, his grappling top level, and his fight IQ continues to grow with every bout. That's why Khabib points to him as the more complete package compared to Ilia, who relies heavily on his boxing and slick submissions but hasn't had to showcase as many layers of his game yet. It's not a knock on Ilia, but rather praise for how complete Usman already is at just 26 years old. However, even as Khabib praised his cousin, Usman is coming off one of the toughest fights of his career. In his last outing, he faced Paul Hughes and walked away with a razor-thin victory that some even argued could have gone the other way. Because of how close that fight was, the PFL quickly decided to run it back, booking the two for a rematch on October 3rd. That fight will be another big test for Usman as he looks to silence any doubts and keep his undefeated streak intact. For now, Ilia continues to reign as the UFC lightweight champion, while Usman dominates outside the organization. Fans will continue to dream of a day when the two might meet, even though that matchup is far from reality. Still, Khabib's comments have reignited debate over who truly deserves the title of most complete lightweight in the world. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We are constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That is why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update here on MMA Pulse News. Moving on to another news, Michael Page believes he is ruining the UFC's plans for him. Page has quickly turned heads after joining the promotion and making a surprising climb up the middleweight division. When he made his way over to the UFC from Bellator in 2024, the expectation was that he would come in as a big name and make an impact in the welterweight rankings. He had been one of Bellator's top welterweights and arrived in the UFC with an impressive 21-2 record. In his debut, Page picked up a solid win over Kevin Holland, showing that he belonged on the roster and could compete with established names. Following that, the UFC matched him up against rising star Ian Gary. That fight didn't go his way, as Page lost via unanimous decision. Many assumed he would continue at welterweight, maybe take a step back, regroup, and get another fight against someone in the same division. But things changed quickly when the UFC booked him against middleweight Nurmagomedov. That matchup shocked many, as people didn't expect Page to move up in weight so soon, but he stunned everyone by defeating Magomedov in convincing fashion. From there, the story only grew more surprising. Page was booked against another tough middleweight in Jared Cannonier, and once again he came out on top. Those victories didn't just keep his momentum alive, they completely shifted the conversation around his UFC career. Instead of being a name the promotion could use to test younger welterweights, Page had suddenly planted himself in the middleweight rankings as a legitimate contender. During a recent press conference for his own promotion, Total Combat Karate, Page spoke openly about the strange situation he feels he's in with the UFC. He explained that because of his age, his established brand, and the timing of his signing, he thinks the UFC initially saw him as a marketable gatekeeper, someone who could draw attention while giving their younger fighters a recognizable opponent to climb the ladder against. But as Page put it, once he started beating those fighters, the plan suddenly didn't make sense anymore. The UFC didn't want him spoiling the rise of their prospects, and at the same time, the more senior fighters in the division didn't want to fight him either. He described it as being stuck in a difficult space where he doesn't quite fit into what the UFC expected from him. Page admitted it's a strange position, but he remains focused on what's next. He mentioned that despite everything, he's still interested in fighting Carlos Prates, even though Prates is currently booked to face Leon Edwards at UFC 322. Page revealed that he's aiming to get one more fight before the year is over. He's eyeing November or December as potential dates, pointing specifically to November 15th, the same card featuring Edwards versus Prates, or December 6th. He stressed that he just wants to stay active and keep building on his success, but so far, he doesn't see many opponents eager to raise their hands and accept the challenge. For now, Page waits to see who steps up, while continuing to prove that his UFC story is far different than anyone predicted. Moving on to another news, shortly after Diego Lopes' win over John Silva, Alexander Volkanovski shared his instant reaction in a video on his YouTube channel. Volk admitted he was surprised by just how dominant Lopes looked in the opening round. He praised the spectacular spinning elbow finish that ended the fight and gave credit to Lopes for stepping up in such an impressive way. Volk explained that going into the matchup, he expected Silva to land some big shots early. He felt that Lopes' chin would probably hold up, but he thought Silva might have success in the opening exchanges before tiring out as the fight went deeper. Instead, Lopes came out aggressive and immediately took control of the action. Volkanovski said he didn't expect Diego to look so dominant right away. He thought maybe Lopes would take a little more damage early and then turn things around in the later rounds. He even admitted that Lopes could have avoided some unnecessary exchanges and put himself less in danger. Still, he acknowledged that maybe that was part of the plan, standing in front of Silva, making him throw big power shots, forcing him to gas, and then capitalizing with something spectacular. And that's exactly what happened with the beautiful spinning elbow finish. Volk noted that while it was brilliant, Lopes did take plenty of damage in the second round before he found the opening to end the fight. The former featherweight champion then touched on the possibility of a rematch. He said he isn't ruling it out and that it's ultimately up to the UFC to decide. Volk pointed out that Lone Murphy is also waiting in the wings after a big knockout win over Pico, but the UFC was clearly watching how this fight between Silva and Lopes played out before making their next move. According to Volkanovski, a wild finish like that might be enough for the promotion to consider throwing Lopes right back into another fight with him. He explained that the UFC absolutely loves fighters like Lopes because he always brings excitement, always puts on entertaining performances, and finds ways to deliver highlight finishes. Volk added that while he just fought Lopes, it's still possible the UFC could push for a quick rematch depending on how they want to build momentum in the division. He made it clear that he isn't attached to one particular opponent and will fight whoever the UFC decides to put in front of him. Volkanovski closed his reaction by reminding fans that he's always willing to take on anyone. Whether it's Lopes again, Murphy, or somebody else, he's ready to go. He doesn't concern himself too much with matchmaking politics and prefers to let the UFC handle those decisions while he stays focused on training and preparing for whoever is next. For now, he's just waiting to see what happens, acknowledging that Lopes' big win has certainly shaken things up in the featherweight division. Moving on to another news, Dana White has received backlash following his recent boxing event that took place during the Canelo vs. Crawford card. Many fans were left frustrated and disappointed by the pacing of the show, pointing out the constant delays caused by unnecessary interviews, commercials, and even live musical performances. What really fueled the criticism was when members of the MMA community dug up an old clip of Dana from November 2024, where he openly mocked boxing organizations for doing the exact same thing. Back then, Dana said that boxing drags on forever because promoters will put on a fight, then have what he called a podcast for over an hour before the next bout. He promised that under his watch, things would be different. He made it clear that the UFC approach was fast-paced, with fights rolling one after another and none of the fluff in between. He insisted that rain delays or breaks filled with unnecessary chatter would never happen in his events. But during the Canelo vs. Crawford card, everything Dana once criticized was happening in real time under his name. The MMA community took to social media to call him out, branding him a hypocrite for not living up to his own words. Fans pointed out that his supposed fix to boxing was nowhere to be seen, as the night dragged on with long gaps and frustrating delays. Many said Dana had failed to keep the fights moving at the quick pace he once promised. One fan noted that the 4-fight main card started at 9 p.m. Eastern, yet by 12:23 a.m. only 3 fights had been completed, with another 20 to 30 minutes expected before the main event. They described the co-main event as awful and couldn't believe how slow the pacing had become. Another fan complained that after 80 minutes of broadcast time, only 1 fight had taken place on the main card. They mocked Dana's famous line, "I'm going to fix boxing," pointing out that 30 minutes went by without a fight, and nothing had changed. Others said they felt like years of their lives had been wasted while waiting for the card to move along. The musical performances drew particular criticism, with fans insisting that no one ever asked for concerts between fights. They pointed out that people do not buy pay-per-views or subscriptions to watch artists perform 2 songs, while everyone sits waiting for the action to resume. Some even said the organizers could save money by cutting these unnecessary segments altogether. Fans also highlighted the overall length of the card, which reportedly took 7.5 hours to get through just 8 fights. This was despite the fact that 3 of those bouts ended in under 4 rounds, and 3 others lasted only 6 rounds or less. Viewers were stunned by how poorly paced the broadcast was, calling it absolute trash. Instead of rolling from one fight to the next, fans were subjected to constant commercials, promotions, and even commentary about how great Saudi Arabia is for boxing. In the end, the Backlash made it clear that fans expected Dana to bring his UFC-style pacing and deliver on his past promises. Instead, they were left with the same issues that have plagued boxing broadcasts for years, and the MMA community didn't hesitate to remind him of his own words. Moving on to another news, Arman has received a warning ahead of a potential showdown with Ilia. Many believe Arman is the clearest and most dangerous threat to Ilia's reign, and the conversation around the matchup has been heating up. Some fans have even gone as far as accusing the champion of avoiding the lightweight contender, knowing how tough of a challenge he presents. Arman hasn't fought since withdrawing at the last minute from a scheduled bout with Islam Makhachev earlier this year, but his record speaks for itself. With a 9-1 run in his last 10 fights, he currently sits as the number 2 ranked fighter in the lightweight division, and that standing alone keeps his name in constant talks whenever Ilia's future is brought up. Still, Dana White and Ilia have both insisted this fight is not happening next, but the hype refuses to die down. Recently, Silva, who trains alongside Arman at American Top Team, weighed in on the possible matchup. Silva has first-hand experience, having fought Arman back in 2023 where he lost via stoppage, so his words carry weight. When asked how he sees a fight between Arman and Ilia playing out, Silva admitted that Arman is absolutely the guy to fight Ilia. He called it undeniable and said no one could argue against it, but at the same time he pointed out flaws that could become an issue if the two actually meet in the octagon. Silva explained that Arman's stand-up isn't bulletproof. He recalled landing a clean left hand against him in their fight, proof that there are openings to exploit. From his perspective, Ilia would be a complicated opponent for Arman because of the champion's skill set. He highlighted Ilia's strong takedown defense, high-level grappling, and solid wrestling, which together make it very difficult for opponents to drag him into their game. In Silva's opinion, Ilia would be able to neutralize Arman's takedowns and then use his sharp boxing to do damage. He described it as a tough stylistic matchup where Ilia's complete package of skills gives him the edge. Even while recognizing Arman's toughness and speed, Silva stressed that Ilia remains the favorite. He noted that Arman's quickness makes him a nightmare for many fighters and it's always hard to keep up with his tempo. But he feels that Ilia's ability to mix things up and avoid being controlled will tilt the fight in his favor. According to Silva, Ilia has been proving in his recent performances that he's incredibly difficult to deal with, and nothing about his trajectory suggests otherwise. Silva's praise for Ilia didn't stop there. He went on to say that he sees Ilia lasting a long time at the top of the division. He admitted he doesn't know what the UFC has planned for him next, or whether a fight with Makhachev will ever happen, but he firmly believes Ilia has the complete game to remain a dominant champion for years to come. For now, fans continue to speculate, and the talk of Arman versus Ilia only grows louder, even if it isn't the next fight on the UFC schedule. Moving on to another news, Robert Whitaker shared his thoughts on Diego Lopes' recent win over Silva, and even though Silva suffered a TKO loss, Rob admitted he was impressed with how the young fighter responded under pressure. Whitaker explained that when Silva was mounted and taking heavy ground and pound, it looked like the fight was nearly over. But the way Silva bounced back once he got to his feet really surprised him. As soon as he created distance, Silva went straight back to work as if nothing had happened. According to Whitaker, it was as though Silva completely pushed the damage out of his mind and just reset himself instantly. Rob pointed out that the comeback attempt actually made things look a little dangerous for Lopes. While Lopes was still in control overall, Silva was starting to find his reads, creating different looks, and making Lopes hesitate. In those moments, Lopes was stuck in the mud, a little slower to react, while Silva opened up with more variety in his striking. Whitaker described how Silva began to let loose with spinning elbows, sharp lead right hands, hooks, and body shots that were landing with real intent. The way Silva mixed up his attacks showed not just creativity, but confidence, and for a moment, it seemed like momentum could shift. Whitaker highlighted how impressive it was to see Silva remain so composed in the exchanges. Despite being in trouble earlier, Silva was throwing strikes with purpose and fluidity. He didn't look shaken or tentative. Instead, he got comfortable in the chaos, fighting with the type of rhythm that makes him dangerous to anyone. Rob said it was striking to see just how quickly Silva adjusted, moving from survival mode into offensive mode within seconds, which is not something you see from every fighter, especially after taking that kind of punishment. He also mentioned that Lopes, who is known for his durability, actually showed signs of being hurt in some of those exchanges. That in itself was telling, because Lopes has built a reputation as someone who rarely gets rocked. Seeing Silva land shots that visibly bothered Lopes was a reminder of just how powerful and precise Silva's offense can be when he gets into a flow. Whitaker believed very few fighters other than Lopes would have been able to withstand that kind of barrage without going down. What stood out most to Rob was Silva's mental toughness. Even after getting dominated early, he refused to break. Instead, he pushed forward, stayed sharp, and began to turn the tide with dangerous combinations. That kind of resilience, according to Whitaker, is something special. It showed a glimpse of Silva's potential and why he can be a problem for many in the division moving forward. By the end of the fight, Lopes had secured the TKO victory, but Silva left a lasting impression on Whitaker and many others who watched. His ability to weather the storm, recover, and then mount a strong offense against a fighter of Lopes's caliber is something that doesn't go unnoticed. Even in defeat, Silva managed to earn respect, proving that he is not just tough, but also skilled and dangerous, capable of making adjustments mid-fight and delivering explosive offense when it matters most. That's it from MMA Pulse News. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for daily MMA news.